Hello everybody, I'm Prescott City Manager Dallin Kimble here with Deputy City Manager Mike Morris. Thanks for joining us on Prescott today. We are in the Freeman building at the Rodeo Grounds, also known as the Fairgrounds, and we want to talk a little bit about the rodeo and what's going on with this property. So with that start, Mike, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great. It's a beautiful Prescott day.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
Everything's green.
Yeah.
Starting to be green. All the construction's out. Lots of projects going on. So here at the rodeo grounds or fairgrounds, we'll use those kind of interchangeably, I think. We've been talking for several months about how to move forward. We know there's some history here, but let's go way back, and I'm going to quiz you a little bit because I know you're newer than I am even. Do you remember when the rodeo started?
Well, the rodeo goes way back, as you mentioned. So 1888 is the origin of the rodeo, starting in the west side of Prescott here, and then eventually moving to its current site in 1913.
1913, one-upping me with the next date.
There you go.
That's awesome. So here since 1913, and then the city bought the property in 2007 in a kind of a swap with the county, and we've had it since then. We know there's some challenges here. What are some of the challenges with the property that we've been trying to address the last few years?
Yeah, with the majority of the amenities that are here were built in the 1930s. And so with that, you have a lot of old deferred maintenance. For example, all the water lines and sewer lines are from the 1930s. And so all the grandstands were built in the 1930s. All the amenities that are here have a lot of age on them. And so that's a challenge, especially as new things have transpired in the rodeo world and in our world. Just the way things are done today are so much different than they used to be. And the expectations of visitors are so much different than they used to be. To have things that are still reflective of the 1930s makes it difficult to do events and a variety of other things at this property.
Well, and I've heard or seen reports where there's $10 to $15 million just in infrastructure work that has to happen to update the sewer lines and the water lines and the power lines.
The stormwater, everything, all the basic infrastructure that's underneath the ground that a lot of people don't see or even aren't aware of. A lot of that is, again, from the 1930s. And so to get that up to date to where there's more capacity so that you could put more restrooms. Right now you couldn't even put more restrooms in because the capacity of the lines couldn't hold it.
So definitely some physical challenges. And then because of some of the age of the infrastructure, there's impacts on neighbors as well, right?
Correct. So, the modern technology today that's out there for sound and light and seating, and so the sound system is still, it's not from the 30s because they didn't have that then, but it's relatively old as well. The impacts to the neighborhood, nothing really new has been done at the site. So everything is the way it was, and so the neighborhood's built up around it, and so now there's impacts to that neighborhood just based on the fact that there's more people now around this property than there used to be.
And so we need to figure out ways to mitigate traffic and parking as well, which wouldn't have been a huge consideration in 1913, right? And we need to think about the light and the sound and just all of these impacts to neighbors and also to others who are on the property. So the rodeo's here, but so is, U of A Cooperative Extension and the Auto Club, and there are others who use this property. City IT is on this property. And we need to try to think about the property holistically and how we're helping everybody to do what they need to do here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the way property now is planned is way different than it used to be. So the way a neighborhood's planned is way different than it used to be. So to bring it up to today's standards, we ought to have some buffering of some kind around this property, whether it's green space or landscaping or some sort of decorative fencing, whatever it is. But there's nothing right now, and so today's modern planning would say we need some buffering, we need some other amenities, we need to somehow redirect traffic in a way that makes sense, allows for turn lanes, allows for a variety of different ways to move people through this whole corridor based on what's here. So that part for the neighborhood is really important, and how this whole property, we can mitigate the impacts to the neighborhood. And then, as you said, then the people are using the property. So not only the rodeo, the extension uses it, the fair is here. There's various college rodeos that come and participate here. The Antique Auto Club does a couple of events here. There's a variety of other events that are happening here. And so right now, the things they have to bring in to do things here, whether it's staging or other types of amenities they have to rent in order to do things here, if those could be incorporated into the site to make it more usable for everyone who's doing an event here, then clearly that makes it a better spot for everyone.
Yeah. So there's been some thoughts and some work on this for a few years, right? And it starts with, I mean, the city in their last agreement with the rodeo said they were going to develop a master plan and they were going to do some work, and we didn't, and we failed in that way. And so the rodeo went ahead and developed a master plan. What happened with that?
Well, they did. I think it's about 3 years ago they developed a master plan. So they went big, I guess is the way to say it, and had a major expansion with a big indoor facility of some kind. Not sure today that's really what they're still planning to do based on our conversations, but that's yet to be seen. So now is the time for the city kind of step forward here and say, what should happen to this property? The city owns it. So what do we want to happen here? What does the city want to happen here? What does the community want to happen here? And so now is an opportunity for us to kind of pause for a second, hit the reset button and say, what is this property about? What should it be used for? How should it be used? How can it be better than it is today? How can it be more multifaceted maybe for the variety of things that need to happen? And how can the community be involved in creating that? And so that's really what we're going to try to do now is how do we get the community involved and define what this place is that represents the city of Prescott.
And I think that's the reset part is important, right? Because I mean, I feel bad that there's been tension and there's been some divisiveness in the community over what's going to happen with this property, and perhaps the city hasn't been as proactive as we should have been. It's our property and it's our opportunity to lead, and we need to step up to that. So now we're trying to fix that. We're trying to do that, step up, lead. What does that look like? How do we get started?
Well, we've begun by putting a community group together, which we're calling our steering committee for the master plan. And so it involves 2 people from the adjacent neighborhood, 2 people from the rodeo, 1 person that's another user of the property. In this case, it's the Arizona Extension Office, one of their staff, and then 2 city staff, myself and Gwen Rowich, who is our Public Works Director.
Yeah. Awesome. Did you pick those people?
The only people I picked was Gwen. So actually, she volunteered, but actually, we asked the neighborhood, you come with 2 people, you have your own meeting or whatever it is you want to have and decide on 2 people to represent the things that are important to you. And we said the same to the rodeo. The rodeo, come up with 2 people that represent you and kind of can understand where you need to be, what you need, so that we can talk about that together. And then we got the extension office just because we wanted someone else who does a lot of things here and understands the other part, the non-rodeo part that needs to happen here. And then Gwen was an obvious choice just because of her public works background and all the infrastructure will be maintained by the Public Works Department. And so she was an obvious choice for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So they're the steering committee for the plan. So are they making the plan, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we're actually in the process. We're working with the steering committee right now to develop an RFP to get a consultant. And so we'll bring in a consultant to develop the master plan. We want someone with some background in rodeo, but also some background in other types of events, in park planning, in landscape architecture, and then obviously in infrastructure and utilities and those sorts of things. So we want someone with a varied background, with a variety of experience in a lot of things, because this property has a lot of different aspects to it. So we need someone who understands that, has experience in that, and they'll lead the process. And then the purpose of the group is then to provide that input from all the perspectives and to really help the consultant understand what's important to each group. So as we work through this, he's able to, or he or she is able to really design something that meets everyone's needs and is also forward thinking of what could happen here in the future.
Right. So for it to really be a win, it has to mitigate some of the impacts on the neighborhood, right?
Correct.
As much as possible, we want those mitigations. It has to be functional for the rodeo. They need to be able to continue their operations and continue the world's oldest rodeo. That's a really cool part of our brand as Prescott. And it has to be one for the city too. We want to be able to use the property as effectively as we can. We don't have a lot of property like this that we get um, to plan out and use, and so it's got to be a win for us too.
That's something that's really exciting about this whole project is this is an opportunity for Prescott to do something very big and very nice, and really about the quality and the brand of Prescott, to speak to the visitors who are coming here. What's the visitor experience like when they come to Prescott? And so when you come to this property, we want something that says, oh, Prescott is awesome. And so how do we do that? And how do we kind of give the Western heritage and the Prescott history and heritage that we have and incorporate that into this site as well? So how do we make this sort of a living museum, if you will, of what Prescott is and what Prescott's all about, and how awesome Prescott is?
Yeah. One of those key branding properties, like the courthouse, like the Dells, like these are cool parts of what Prescott is that we want to preserve and share with people. So what about the public? How do they get involved? Are they involved at all in the planning? What does that look like?
Yeah, they will be. So as we get a consultant on board, we have the steering committee to help that consultant. But then there will be a series of stakeholder and community meetings. So we envision, a big community meeting with the neighborhood, so that all the neighbors, not just the two that are on the committee, can share some insights. Same with the rodeo. The whole rodeo board likely will have a meeting with the consultant. We'll reach out then to the other users that use the property, the fair, the auto club, the extension office, whoever else is out there, and have them come and share their desires, thoughts, and probably a couple meetings that are just general, open to the public, that anyone can come to, so that we can get a variety of takes on what this property ought to be, a variety of input, variety of perspectives, so that everyone kind of has a voice in this. And so ultimately then, whatever's developed will go to City Council, and City Council will then have some open public meetings where they'll discuss this and ultimately, hopefully, approve whatever the master plan is.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the committee's not making any decisions really. They're helping to filter a little bit. They're helping us to get to these public meetings, helping us to consider new ideas. But everybody gets a voice. The decisions are made by the council, and that's their role. And so that's awesome. And when we reach the place where we've got an approved plan from the council, then we can move forward with implementation.
Correct. Then we'll have to develop some sort of a CIP plan, a capital to fix all the things that need to be fixed here. And so that'll take some time to develop from the master plan. Then what's the implementation plan of where in our future capital improvement plan do these things begin to show up? How do we finance those things? And then what does that look like going forward? How long does that take? And so we'll begin to work through those details after the master plan's done.
Yeah. That's probably going to be tens of millions of dollars. It's going to take time.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the master plan that the rodeo had done previously was projected around $45 million to do everything. Now, we may not want everything that's in that plan. A significant amount of money is the point. It's going to be anywhere from $15 to $50 million to do what ultimately needs to be done here. Now, that may not all be at one time. It'd probably be phased over a series of years. But at some point, to make this the quality place we want it to be, it's going to take some investment.
So thinking about dollars, a couple years ago, there was $15 million in a legislative action from the state that was going to come to the rodeo. Do we know, I know that's been kind of in limbo in the courts. Where are we at with that $15 million?
Yes, so that's been discussed. There was a court case, as you mentioned, and so the judge has heard both sides of the argument and is due to have a ruling on that here any day, basically, in very near future. And so we'll see what comes from that. That's $15 million, which could really get a kickstart, especially for the infrastructure that's needed here, that's needed first before you start adding other amenities. And so there's also been a lot of discussion in the legislature. Our delegation has taken forward to try to help get that $15 million to the city so that we could then start the plan once it's developed. And so there's been a lot of work behind the scenes at the state level to try to help make this place a better place.
Mm-hmm. So say that, that $15 million comes through, whether it comes to the rodeo or it comes to the city. We won't be done with the plan quite yet, probably. What do we do with that?
Yeah, as far as a timeline for the plan, we've just begun. And so the steering committee has met once. They'll meet again in the next coming months to select a consultant. And so that process will probably in the fall, we'll start to see more community meetings and then get to a finished plan probably somewhere right after the first of the year, I'm guessing. So likely early next 2026, that'll get to city council. And so that'll kind of dictate where that money should start. Ideally, the money would start with the first phase, which is likely the infrastructure. But either way, that funds would either go to the city and sit in our coffers until the time that we've developed what's next on the plan and then begin to implement that and create. The whole purpose of the master plan is not only to be a big vision of what could happen there, but we're also going to have the consultant work on phases. So break this up in chunks. So what are the phases and what portion of what funds could be used in what phases?
Right. It's the eating the elephant one bite at a time kind of
Exactly.
approach. Yeah. Right. And I've been impressed with how well the folks at the rodeo have been willing to work with us and talk with us. The folks in the neighborhood have been willing to talk to us about what their concerns are and how we might be able to move forward in positive ways. The other tenants here on the rodeo grounds have been positive. So I think our ability, and I know there's past history there, but it seems like everybody wants to come together and move forward. And I believe we've even had our first meeting of this steering committee. Is that right?
Yeah, so what's been interesting in my short time here, a little less than 6 months, but everyone loves rodeo. The neighborhood says they love the rodeo. They come, they participate in it, they're involved in it. And so everyone loves rodeo. The question was just what is this next for the rodeo? And so I think the unknown and the fact that, as you said, the city really wasn't involved in what's next for the rodeo. And so I think the uncertainty is really what gave angst to some folks in the community. And so now we've been able to sit down and talk about might this look like and understand perspectives. So now the rodeo has a better perspective of the neighborhood's concerns, and the neighborhood has a better perspective of the rodeo's concerns. So both parts, the neighborhood and the rodeo, have been very good so far of sitting down and talking through and understanding one another's perspectives so that they can each then try to reach, what is the best thing.
Right. And the clarification I think helps. I can really relate to the idea of like, I don't want a concert next door every night. I don't want, those impacts that I don't want cars parked up and down my street every night so I don't have a place to park when I go home from work or things like that. So making sure we're mitigating the impacts and being clear on what the impacts are, that concerts aren't really part of the plan. Yep. Things like that, as we get clearer and clearer, I think we'll have a better ability to.
That was part of the conversation in the first meeting as well, is the neighborhood, what are the other events the city would like to have here? And so the answer is, we're not sure. We would like to have some other things here, but they have to be the right scale and size that fit the amenities that are here and aren't an impact on the community, as you just mentioned. So that conversation will develop as well as what are the right things to host on this property once these improvements are done.
And then to create kind of the win-win-win of the neighborhood is not having those impacts. Maybe there are amenities we can put on the property that are also benefits to the area. The rodeo has what they need to continue performing at a high level. The city has what we need to make sure it's a good deal for everybody and to use the property as effectively as we can. And it seems like we're really on that path. Once we have this plan, right, which you just said that's going to be probably early next year, we have the plan, we start to implement the plan. We've talked a little bit too about like the zoning on the property and when do we consider zoning?
Well, as we develop the master plan and as it gets approved, then we'll have to look at what's in the plan, how does that match the zoning of the property? Right now, the zoning of the property is residential high density, which, there are no plans to build high density residential here ever, but that's what the zoning has been. So is there a zoning that makes more sense? There's a recreational space zoning, but it really doesn't fit exactly into that either. So is there a zoning it fits into? And in fact, because it's city property, we don't necessarily have to change the zoning, but as we get the master plan done, we can look at that and say, what zoning is the right zoning for this property based on the future of this property from the master plan.
And then the plan can also inform leases for the tenants on the property and make sure that those fit, but you kind of have to know what you're going to use it for before and what the structures are going to look like and all of that before you can say, here's what the lease is going to be.
Correct. And then, who are the other users that want to use the property, and, what does that agreement look like to use the property based on what's here? And so until they can see what's going to be here, it's hard to really do that. But everyone understands that that's coming. We've had that conversation that eventually, we'll have to do or amend the lease agreement or create a new one. In the past, by default, the maintenance of this property has been on the rodeo. And so they've done what they can based on the funding they have to try to keep the property as up to date as they can. But now the city is going to step forward. And so what does that look like? And how does that change the lease agreement as well? Or is the city now going to be responsible for maintenance? And because of that, the structure of the lease changes and the payment that the rodeo makes changes, and the payment that other user groups coming to use the property changes. And so that's all part of that discussion. Once the master plan is done, we'll have a better feel and understanding what the property is going to be, and it can then translate into what's next for those groups.
And I like that idea of, it's the city property and we need to step up and take care of it and make sure that it stays, in good condition, that we don't get into a situation in the future where we've got all of this deferred maintenance because we haven't been taking care of our own property. That's typically a landlord responsibility, but you're right, that'll be part of our conversations down the road as we think about how to move forward. Anything else? Anything we've missed in terms of?
Well, we've talked about a lot. So I think the biggest thing is just for the community to know that this really is community property. And so we want to make it the best community property we can that serves the whole city as much as possible. And so really for the community to understand that we really want to do what's best for Prescott. And so, but to do that, the rodeo has to be successful. The neighbors have to be able to live in their homes. And then the city needs to be able to use it in a way that's beneficial as well. So as you mentioned earlier, how's that a win-win for everyone, and how's it a win for the whole city? And for all of us to keep that perspective in mind, that this is really about the whole city, not just one particular group or one particular neighborhood.
I think as we do that too, we see the win-wins in the relationship, right? I really appreciate, like I said before, the rodeo and the neighborhood and everybody coming together on this topic, the other users of the property and the city. I appreciate the leadership of the city council and letting us step up and chase this and make sure we make it right. And then I really appreciate your leadership too, as you are the leader for the city of this project, making sure that we're not only doing the right things, but also doing them the right way. And I think that's a really important part of everything we do, but especially projects like this that matter so much to our community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you for being here in the Freeman building at the rodeo grounds. That's all we have for today. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you next time.